Hey everybody, welcome to another Intro to HTML video. This really isn't just another Intro to HTML video. This is one of the big ones. It's going to be a wild ride, so hold on to your hats. We're going to cover making a multi-column layout, and we're going to expand on this in future videos, but we're going to start with just a basic two-column. This is going to be the foundation for a lot of the things that we're going to do from now on out, and a lot of things that you're going to do as a web developer until new technologies come out. So let's get started. We need to start with just a header. We're going to have a footer. We're going to have 3 articles. Each article is going to contain an H2 and 3 paragraphs. With some dummy text. I'm using lorem ipsum, just like always. Copy it, paste it, copy this article, paste it, put an H1 up in the header, and then put some text in the footer. I'm going to edit the title so that it doesn't say my first web page, it says my first multi-column web page. I'm going to save it, file, save as, find an appropriate place to put it. This will be lesson 8. HTML files. And I'm going to call it multi-column. Check it in the browser, and this is what I have. Okay, this is nothing special. We've done this dozens of times by now. We have our header with an H1. We open an article with an H2 in it. It's going to have 3 paragraphs. It's going to close. I'm going to have another article that's exactly the same with an H2, 3 paragraphs, and it closes. And then one more article with an H2, 3 paragraphs, and article closes, and then the footer is down here. You need to make sure you have this before we move on. All right, now we've got our basic layout. Looks like this. It's not a multi-column layout yet. In order to create a multi-column layout, we're going to need to create some more HTML structure. Let's do this. Right below the header and right above the first article, we are going to open a div. And I'm going to call it ID main-content. And then I'm going to close it down below where the second article closes. So here's my first article, opens and closes. Here's my second article, opens and closes right here. I want to close my div right here. And I'm going to put a comment in here to indicate that this is my closing div. Comments look like this, exclamation mark, 2 dashes, 2 more dashes, and in between those 4 dashes, you can make your comment. close main div. I'm going to highlight my two articles here and I'm going to tab them over. There we go, just so we've got some white space and it's clear that it's nested inside of there. There we go. That's going to be my main div. I'm going to open another div right below there. So right above where the last article is and right below where the closing div of the main is, I'm going to go div ID sidebar. I'm going to go down below this article, right above the footer, because remember this is the last article. I'm going to close the div, put a comment in, close sidebar div. And then I'm going to tab this article over, so I can just select it all, tab it over. There we go. I'm going to save it, check it in the browser, and we're going to see that nothing happened. Remember, divs don't do anything on their own. We have to do some stuff to make sure that they do anything. They're totally unstyled. They're just a division of space. Now, we've got our two divs, your sidebar and your main. These are going to be the divisions of space that are going to break up our document into columns. Main content is going to be on the left, sidebar is going to be on the right. Let's go up to our style sheet. We're going to make style rules for sidebar and main. Number symbol, main content, number symbol, sidebar. First thing that I want to do when I want to make columns in a multi-column layout is I want to set the widths on these columns. I'm going to set them to some values that add up to 100%. So I'll start with width, 60%, and sidebar width, 30%. Save it. Check it in the browser, see if it worked. Sure enough, my main content is 60% wide, my sidebar is 40% wide. But they're still not columns. They're stacked vertically on top of each other. You've seen a previous video where we used floats. What float does is it takes something out of the flow of the document and shifts it to one side or the other and lets other content flow around it. Well, if I float both of these divs to the left, and if their total width between the two, 60 and 40, is less than or equal to 100%, they're going to sit next to each other like columns. They both float side by side. So they're 60 and 40. Which they are. They're both floated, and you can see I have two columns. So quickly in review, I've got my div main content wrapping up two articles. The articles have paragraphs and H2s. We've got to make sure that this div closes. Sidebar opens up right below the closing div of the main, and it's got one article in it. And you've got to make sure you close it. Then I've got my footer down here. Let's look at what's in the browser again. You can see I've got my main content here with its two articles, with its subheads and its paragraphs. And then I've got my sidebar with its one article and three paragraphs. And then footer text here. That's weird. We'll revisit this in just a little bit. Keep this in mind because this is where the last bit comes into play. Let's look at the CSS. So I've got my divs established, my HTML set up, and then I've got my CSS. Main content was set to 60% width, sidebar was set to 40% width. Remember, the widths have to add up to 100%. Then I floated them both to the left. We don't float one right, we don't float one left, we float them both to the left. If you float them both to the left, they're both going to move to the left as far as they can go, and flow around the content that's next to them. So they both flow around each other and you get those two columns. Now if we go back to the page, you're going to notice that I pointed out that the footer is behaving really strange. The footer should show up down at the bottom of the page here, down below the lowest column, but it's not. Well, here's the deal. I'm going to put some more text content in the footer. I'm going to take this lorem ipsum text and I'm just going to paste it in here. Save it. Refresh it. And you'll notice that it's kind of flowing around that. I'm going to put some more text in there so it's even more clear. You're going to notice that my footer here, footer starts here, it flows around my main content, and it goes all the way down to here. Well, that's not behaving the way it should, right? Or is it? Well, really, it's behaving exactly the way it should. If you think of the way floats behave, is when we had that figure and we put it into the paragraphs, the paragraph text flowed around the right side of it. Essentially, that's what's happening here. The main column, main content column, is floated to the left, and all of the text in the footer flows around it. Okay, so how do we fix this? This doesn't do what we want it to do. First things first, I'm going to delete all this lorem ipsum that I had in there in the footer so that my footer just says footer text here. I like to be emphatic about that. What we need to do is clear the footer. I'm going to select footer. I'm just going to give it one declaration. Clear left. Going to check it. And there we go. My footer moved down to the bottom. What this says is that nothing can sit to the left side of this element. So if there is something that's floated above it, normally that thing that's below it, like the footer, would have itself move to the right and flow around that thing that's floated. Well, I decided to clear the left side. When I clear the left side, it says nothing can sit to the left side. Therefore, that thing that's floated above it can't sit to the left side of it. And then the footer snaps down to the bottom where it belongs. So those are the parts of our multi-column layout. The rules are pretty simple. Establish your divs that you want to have as your columns. Go up to your style sheet. Set the widths on those columns to something that equals 100% or less. Float both columns left and clear your footer. And you've got the basis for a multi-column layout. Now, in future videos, we're going to play around with white space because right now, this does not look good at all. We've got no margins, we've got no padding, there's no room for the composition to breathe. It feels very crowded, it feels way too wide, it just looks like garbage. So we are going to play around with the box model. We're going to play around with white space until we get a more comfortable looking design. Thanks for watching.